Hello, everyone. I'm Sarah. I'm a writer and herbologist working with ICEERS, and I'm here with Natalia, who is the coordinator of the legal defense program at ICEERS. And she's going to tell us a bit about a current case that the organization is working on that's super significant. And so, Natalia, would you be able to provide an overview of the current legal situation on Santo Daime in France?
Yes, so back in 2005, ayahuasca was scheduled as a controlled substance, as a narcotic drug, by the Ministry of Interior after actually a Santo Daime case, which Claude Bauchet was also involved. And so 2019, Claude Bauchet was again arrested. So France was the first place in the world where ayahuasca was scheduled as a controlled substance. So at the moment, after 5 years, finally the court trial has been scheduled for June 4th. So that's next Tuesday. And basically the charges of Claude Bauchet is, first of all, endangering the life of others with immediate risk of death, unauthorized transport of narcotics, possession of narcotics, offer and distribution of narcotics, and importation and use of narcotics. So it's 5 charges that Claude Bauchet is facing next week. So what's complicated about the situation is that ayahuasca is a controlled substance in France. So this is a very different scenario that we're facing as opposed to other countries where we know that DMT is scheduled, but not ayahuasca. But in this court case, this is a very complex legal challenge.
Okay, and so you've been working on this case for a long time now, and ICEERS has been involved in this case for quite some time. Can you explain the scientific and regulatory background that led to this classification and how this impacts religious practices involving ayahuasca?
So in 2005, the Ministry of Interior considered that ayahuasca was a narcotic. And they based this decision on a report made by the Ministry of Interior, where they considered that Santo Daime is actually a sect. And they also considered that ayahuasca poses a danger to public health, without considering, of course, all the scientific evidence that is available. More than 100 research papers that are, published in very respected, platforms in the scientific arena. And so this kind of is a perfect example of how often the public policy is not based in scientific evidence. So basically, from ICEERS, we've supported Claude Bauchet's case with 2 main arguments. First of all, that there's no risk in public health, and the second one is how a state can actually just consider what's a religious freedom or not. So this case will be very important because a judge will have the opportunity to discern on what is necessary to guarantee the freedom of thought, consciousness, and religion as a foundation in a democratic society, and what is considered a danger to public health without any evidence-based decision. So this is, I think, the main and crucial point of Claude Bauchet's case. And it's just important to know that there's 2 procedures going on at this moment. So first one is Claude Bauchet kind of criminal case, his freedom. And the second one is with ICEERS, we kind of demanded the French state or government with an administrative process saying, you need to reconsider and reschedule ayahuasca with the evidence that is available at the international level. So the relationship with the principle of equality and non-discrimination is also a very important point and kind of the foundation of this court case, which is, of course, very important at the European and international level, because as we know, when France scheduled ayahuasca as a controlled substance, being the first country in the world that did this, then Italy followed the path of prohibitionism without taking into consideration the evidence that is available. So the story of how ayahuasca got scheduled in France, goes back to 2005, but actually is a perfect example on how states and governments are not basing their decisions on evidence, which is something that as a democratic society, we need to start demanding. And it not only involves drug policies, but it also involves other, human rights that are not really based on evidence.
And you touched on this a bit, but what are some of the key arguments and scientific research that ICERs will bring to the French ministry in regards to their stance on ayahuasca?
Well, first of all, that ayahuasca does not cause addiction, which is kind of the main concern of the French government. And basically the governments tend to believe that this substances cause addiction. And there's a lot of research papers and there's a lot of, evidence. Also, in addition to all the ancestral evidence that we have that this substance is safe. So first of all, that ayahuasca does not cause an addiction, that there's no tolerance, and of course that whenever there's a safe environment, these substances are actually quite safe and they're actually being treated for addiction. So there's a lot of evidence that we've generated from ICERs and maybe other colleagues in the scientific field, especially with the Santo Daime, on how Santo Daime practitioners are actually demonstrating that they have, their indicators of improving their health, and health in the broader conception, not only health as opposed to illness, but rather than, having the right to have, how do we affirm ourselves in life, and which spiritual practice do you have in relationship with health. So there's a lot of scientific evidence around this, and also in the legal part, which is kind of what I will be deliberating in the court, is that Brazil, for example, has regulation for Santo Daime allowing, back in the 90s, the Santo Daime is a religious practice, cultural practice as well, and religious practice, because, how do we define religion is also something that will be crucial in a state that, feels entitled to define what is considered a sincere practice, or what is not considered a sincere practice, especially with the sectarian argument, which is very delicate, because when a state can actually arbitrarily consider what is a sect, it's quite a very dangerous threshold, not making kind of a ponderation between human rights and public health. So I think the judge will have this opportunity to kind of balance the limits of a restriction to a human right.
Thanks for that overview. It's interesting how much this case is really reflective of all of the issues that we're facing with the globalization of plant medicine, and how in one culture it might be considered and respected as sacred, and other cultures it's a dangerous drug. So this case is happening in France, but what ways does Claude Bauchet's situation highlight the broader issues of religious freedom and human rights?
Well, I think this case crystallizes the colonial thinking of what is considered, let's say that the broader right is freedom of consciousness, and religious freedom is part of this consciousness. So I think this crystallizes this colonial thinking of just imposing what is considered a sincere religion and what is not considered a sincere religion. And also what Vandana Shiva would call the monoculture of the mind. Like where is the space, or where can we fit under the umbrella of multiculturalism or pluralism in consciousness? Where does that fit in the state where prohibitionism is kind of the general rule? So we know that in drug policy, we're able to revert this colonial thinking with court cases. So it's through the judicial system that we are actually being able to challenge colonial thinking. So I think this case illustrates how states and governments are normally just bringing this monoculture of the mind of how one should behave. And I think this is a perfect opportunity to bring that, this colonial and paternalist approach of where we're being forced into monoculture. And I think pluralism is what is crucial in the pyramid of a democratic society.
I love that expression, monoculture of the mind. And as anybody that wants to support the decolonization of these structures and move towards a different, more evolved mindset, what challenges do you foresee in the process of reevaluating the legal status of ayahuasca?
Well, I think it's always about the monoculture of the mind. It's always about imposing, what a state considers normal, or how should one behave, not really respecting the frontier of the skin, and what Michel Foucault would call the life cultures or life policies. And I think even when we put all of our efforts in the scientific field, in the legal field, in the cultural field, in the religious field, in the consciousness field, there's always like this barrier whenever we're confronting a state. And I think it reduces to public policies not being evidence-based. And I think this is the most important challenge that we will face, because sometimes we put all of our efforts, we demonstrate the scientific evidence, we demonstrate with the legal piece, but of course, very often, public policies are they come from the monoculture, and they come from the colonial thinking. So I think this is the main challenge, that sometimes, even with our efforts, we're not really able to revert. And it's a process. I think it's a human process, and we need to trust that we're being kind of in a process of bringing back this pluralism of the mind, and the states really kind of complying with their international obligations of also respecting freedom of religion, freedom of consciousness, and opening the mind to what is considered a sincere practice.
Thanks for your insights. I definitely hold that vision. So is there anything else that you'd like to share?
Well, I think just, how this legal case will be very important, not only at the European level, but it's the first court case where we're facing that actually ayahuasca is a controlled substance per se, like psychotraviridis, manisteropsis capi, ayahuasca in the law. And this will be a very important court case at the international level, because we know that this drug policy strategies they're always interconnected. And states find inspiration in other decisions, in other court case decisions, not only for prohibitionism, but also, to kind of opening maybe the possibility. This is about a possibility of bringing a new way of understanding law, a new way of understanding religion, a new way of understanding culture, a new way of, kind of inviting the governments to leave behind this suspicious argument of substances where, plant medicines have been used ancestrally, but now we're here in 2024 with the same kind of, with the same challenge of, we have evidence, we have all legal parts, we have international legal instruments, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the European Covenant of Human Rights. We have, a lot of jurisprudence around religious freedom. And once again, we're stuck in prohibitionism and this illusion of how the states feel entitled to regulate or prohibition or bring prohibitionism to our consciousness. So I think this is a very important court case, and also an opportunity as the collective to really kind of hold space, not only for Claude, but also for the collective and the international movement.
Definitely, and we'll be sharing updates on how things go, and good luck in the court case coming up.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And also Claude has this platform to support, if you want to support Claude's legal challenge. I think, he's an elder. He's been fighting this with his life back since 2005. And he's been also a teacher. Claude has been a teacher for me also in the legal field, where he says, whenever a law doesn't make sense in the heart, we are obliged to disobey. That's our integrity, that's our impeccability in how we relate to laws. Because, sometimes laws are, they've been passed through a parliamentary process and so on, but that really doesn't mean they're fair. So Claude has been a man that I really, I really look up to, I admire so much. And he's been called to this civil disobedience. So I think Claude is also not only an elder in the, religious and consciousness field, but also in the legal field, where he's, been standing very much in his integrity, inviting us to really question the laws, not because they're written and they're passed through the parliamentary process means that we're just obliged to comply. So I think this is also very, I'm just honoring Claude's process as a human being and how he really stands in integrity with his medicine.
Mhm. Well, may this work in the process help ease to more compassionate laws for people in all parts of the world. And there is also various resources on the ICEER's website about the legal defense program that we have going, and Natalia's work in Mexico also. So feel free to take a look at that. And thanks everyone for watching.
Thank you so much.